The strange thing is that everything started with an empty chair. Not a car crash. Not a betrayal. Not some dramatic moment from a movie. Just one empty chair that nobody was allowed to use. At 7:30 on a Friday night, the restaurant was packed. Every table was full. The waiting list stretched across 2 pages. The kitchen was behind on orders. And I was trying very hard not to think about the overdue electricity bill sitting on my kitchen counter at home. Table 12 needs drinks. Coming. Table 6 wants their check. I know. Emma, move. Trying. The restaurant buzzed with voices, clinking glasses, and impatient customers. My feet hurt. My back hurt. My smile felt borrowed. But rent didn't care how tired I was. Neither did life. I grabbed a tray and moved through the crowd. My phone vibrated inside my apron pocket. I checked it for half a second. A photo appeared on the screen. My daughter. 8 years old. Missing front tooth. Huge smile. The picture had been taken that morning before school. Under it was a text from my neighbor. Sophia finished her homework. She's asking when you'll be home. A lump formed in my throat. I typed quickly. Tell her I'll be home soon. Love her. Then I shoved the phone away. Back to work. Back to survival. Emma. I turned. My manager, Rick, stood near the entrance. He looked stressed, which usually meant everyone else was about to become stressed too. What happened? I asked. A VIP reservation canceled. Good. No. I frowned. Why is that bad? Because now 6 different people think that table belongs to them. I sighed. Of course. The table in question sat near the window. Best view in the restaurant. Most expensive section. Most requested. And currently empty. For exactly 3 minutes. Not that it mattered. Another reservation was arriving soon. Handle the front, Rick said. I'm already handling half the building. Please. I looked at him. He looked desperate. I gave up. Fine. I headed toward the entrance. The hostess was busy answering calls. People waited near the door. Some looked annoyed. Others looked hungry. One guy was already checking his watch every 10 seconds. Normal Friday night. Then the front doors opened. And everything shifted. Not dramatically. Not instantly. Just enough for me to notice. A tall man stepped inside. Dark suit. Expensive watch. Confident walk. The kind of confidence money teaches people. A few heads turned. Not because they knew him. Because he carried himself like someone used to being noticed. He stopped at the host's stand. The hostess smiled professionally. Good evening. Do you have a reservation? No. His voice was calm. Controlled. I'd like a table. The hostess checked the screen. I'm sorry, sir. We're fully booked tonight. He glanced across the restaurant. His eyes landed on the empty table by the window. Table 14. The one everyone wanted. What about that one? Reserved. When? In 20 minutes. He nodded once. Then he reached into his pocket. Not aggressively. Not arrogantly. Just casually. Like someone solving a simple problem. A black credit card appeared between his fingers. I'll pay double. The hostess froze. I saw it happen. That awkward moment when someone doesn't know how to respond. I stepped forward. I apologize, sir, but the table is already promised to another guest. His gaze shifted to me. For the first time. Something tightened inside my stomach. Not fear. Just awareness. His eyes were unusually focused. Like he noticed details other people ignored. You're the manager? No. Then who decides? My manager. Get him. The words weren't rude. That was the strange part. They weren't polite either. Just certain. Like he expected results. I looked toward Rick. He immediately shook his head. Absolutely not. The message was clear. Handle it yourself. Great. Sir, I said carefully, I understand the situation, but we can't give away reserved seating. He studied me. A second passed. Then another. Do you know what today is? I blinked. No. My birthday. I wasn't sure what answer he expected. So I stayed quiet. He looked almost amused. Most people would make an exception. Most people don't work here. A couple standing nearby looked between us. The hostess suddenly became fascinated by her computer screen. The air felt different now. Thicker. More attention. More tension. The man glanced toward the empty table again. Then back to me. You have an open seat. For 20 more minutes. Then seat me. I can't. You won't. I folded my arms. Both. For the first time, something flickered across his face. Not anger. Surprise. As if people didn't usually tell him no. Interesting. Unfortunately, interesting people rarely made my life easier. Behind me, Rick appeared. Finally. He forced a smile. "Good evening, sir." The man's attention shifted. "I'd like the table." "I'm sorry, but—" "The table is empty." Rick swallowed. I actually felt bad for him. Almost. "We have policies." The man looked at him. Then at me. Then back at the empty chair. A muscle moved in his jaw. Small. Barely noticeable. But it was there. Disappointment. Real disappointment. For some reason that hit differently. Not because I planned to change my answer. Because it made him seem human. For a moment. Then his expression disappeared again. Cold. Controlled. Distant. "Interesting," he said quietly. Rick forced another smile. "We'd be happy to place you on the waiting list." The silence that followed felt longer than it probably was. Finally, the man laughed once. Not happily. Just once. Then he slid the black card back into his pocket. "Keep the table." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. He looked directly at me. Not Rick. Not the hostess. Me. Something in that look made my chest tighten. Not because he threatened me. Because he remembered me. Completely. Like he had memorized my face. "Enjoy your evening," I said. The words sounded ridiculous the second they left my mouth. His eyes narrowed slightly. Then he nodded. "What?" And walked away. The doors closed behind him. The entire entrance area exhaled. Rick groaned. "Oh God." "What?" "You know who that was?" "No." The hostess looked horrified. "You seriously don't know?" I shook my head. Rick stared at me. Then laughed nervously. The kind of laugh people make before bad news. "Emma?" "What?" "That was Nathan Cross." The name meant nothing. Absolutely nothing. I waited. Rick looked even more shocked. "You've never heard of him?" "No." The hostess nearly dropped a menu. "He's everywhere." I shrugged. "I work 60 hours a week." Rick rubbed his forehead. "Nathan Cross owns Cross Holdings." Still nothing. Should I know what that is? Neither of them answered immediately. That worried me. Finally Rick spoke. "Half the buildings on this street belong to him." My stomach sank. A little. Not because he was rich. Rich people came into the restaurant all the time. It was the way Rick said it. Like we hadn't just turned away a customer. Like we'd accidentally started something. I glanced toward the doors. The man was gone. The street outside looked normal. Cars passed. People walked. Life continued. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. A tiny crack. A tiny mistake. Something invisible. My phone vibrated again. A new message. This time from Sophia. "Love you, Mom. Don't work too hard." I smiled despite myself. Then slipped the phone away. "Everything's fine," I said. Mostly to myself. Rick didn't look convinced. Neither did the hostess. And for reasons I couldn't explain. I wasn't convinced either. Because the last thing I remembered before returning to work was the look Nathan Cross gave me before he left. Calm. Silent. Unforgettable. Like the story wasn't over. Like it had only just begun. And I had no idea how much that one empty chair was about to cost me. I thought the worst part was over. I was wrong. The worst part hadn't even introduced itself yet. The next morning I woke up before my alarm. Not because I was rested. Because I had dreamed about him. Again. Nathan Cross. The man with the empty birthday table. The man whose eyes refused to leave my head. I sat upright in bed and immediately felt annoyed with myself. Why was I even thinking about him? I had customers every day. Difficult ones. Entitled ones. Forgettable ones. Yet somehow this stranger had followed me home without taking a single step inside my apartment. "Mom?" I turned. Sophia stood in the doorway holding her stuffed rabbit. Her hair looked like it had survived a hurricane. "Bad dream?" she asked. I forced a smile. "No." You made the thinking face. "What thinking face?" She narrowed her eyes dramatically. "This one." She copied me perfectly. I laughed despite myself. "That's rude." "It's accurate. Come here." She climbed into bed beside me. For a few minutes the world felt normal. Just me. Just my daughter. Just another morning. Then my phone buzzed. The feeling disappeared. A message from Rick. "Come in early. Need to talk." That wasn't normal. Rick hated mornings. If he wanted to talk before my shift, something was wrong. I stared at the message. A strange pressure settled in my stomach. Not fear. Not yet. Just warning. The kind you feel before thunder arrives. An hour later I walked into the restaurant. Something felt off immediately. The staff room was unusually quiet. Nobody was joking. Nobody was complaining. Nobody was talking. Several people looked at me, then quickly looked away. My pace slowed. Okay, definitely weird. I found Rick near the office. His shirt was wrinkled. His coffee sat untouched. That alone was alarming. Morning. He looked up. You came. What kind of greeting is that? He didn't answer. Instead, he closed the office door. My pulse ticked upward. Rick? Still nothing. He rubbed his face, then sighed. Long. Heavy. Like he hadn't slept. How much do you know about Nathan Cross? I blinked. There it is. There what is? The reason you texted me. His jaw tightened. Just answer. Almost nothing. He nodded slowly. That's what I was afraid of. The room suddenly felt smaller. What happened? Rick leaned against his desk. After he left. He stopped. Started again. After he left, I got 3 phone calls. My stomach dropped slightly. From him? No. Worse. I stared. How is that worse? Lawyers. The word landed harder than expected. What? 3 different law firms. My mouth opened, then closed. What did they want? Information. About what? You. The silence hit differently. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just cold. You mean me? Yes. I laughed once. A short nervous sound. That's ridiculous. Rick wasn't laughing. That made it worse. What information? Employment history. What? Work records. Why? I don't know. Neither of us believe that. I folded my arms. This is insane. I agree. So what are you saying? Rick hesitated. That hesitation scared me more than anything he'd said so far. Finally he spoke. Emma? People don't usually tell Nathan Cross no. The room went quiet again. I looked away. Toward the office window. Toward the dining room. Toward anything except Rick. Because I already knew that. I had known it the second Nathan looked at me before leaving. The problem wasn't his anger. It was how controlled it was. Angry people yell. They slam doors. They make scenes. Nathan hadn't done any of that. He had simply left. That somehow felt worse. Maybe it's unrelated, I said. Rick didn't respond. Maybe. The word sounded weak. Even to him. The rest of the day felt strange. Every little thing made me jump. A ringing phone. A customer asking questions. A manager from another location stopping by. Nothing happened. Which somehow made everything worse. Around lunch my phone buzzed. Sophia. A picture message. I smiled immediately. She was missing 2 buttons on her school sweater. Again. Mrs. Parker says I need sewing lessons. I typed back. Mrs. Parker is correct. 3 dots appeared. Then another message. You sound grumpy today. I stared. Children noticed everything. Too much sometimes. Just tired. Love you. The knot inside my chest loosened slightly. Love you more. Then the phone rang. Unknown number. I frowned. Ignored it. 5 seconds later it rang again. Same number. I answered. Hello. Silence. I waited. Nothing. Then the line disconnected. A chill slid down my back. I stared at the screen. Unknown caller. No message. No explanation. Just silence. I hated silence. At least words gave you something to fight. That evening the restaurant grew busy. The dinner rush arrived. Orders piled up. People complained. Life returned to normal. Or pretended to. I was carrying drinks to table 9 when the front doors opened. Every nerve in my body reacted. For 1 second I thought it was him. Nathan. It wasn't. Just another customer. I almost laughed at myself. Almost. Then I noticed someone watching me. A man sitting alone near the back. Maybe 40. Dark jacket. Coffee untouched. Eyes focused directly on me. The moment our gazes met, he looked away. Strange. I kept moving. 10 minutes later I looked again. Still there. Watching. My hands tightened around my tray. Who was he? A customer? A private investigator? Someone connected to Nathan? Or was my imagination getting out of control? I didn't know. And that uncertainty followed me through the rest of the shift. The restaurant closed after midnight. I was exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that settles behind your eyes. I grabbed my bag. Checked my phone. 1 missed call. Unknown number. Again. No voicemail. I walked outside. Cold air hit my face. The parking lot was mostly empty. A few cars remained. Streetlights reflected off wet pavement. I started toward my car. Then stopped. A black box sat on the hood. Small. Perfectly wrapped. Silver ribbon. No card. No note. Nothing. I looked around. The parking lot was empty. Every instinct told me not to touch it. Unfortunately, curiosity won. Slowly I picked it up. The box wasn't heavy. Inside sat a single object. A silver birthday candle. Unused. Pristine. And beneath it, one folded piece of paper. My fingers suddenly felt cold. I unfolded it. Only 6 words were written inside. You should have seated him. I stared. Read it again. Then again. No signature. No explanation. Nothing. Just 6 words. The wind moved through the parking lot. For the first time all day, real fear arrived. Not panic. Not terror. Something quieter. Something worse. Because now I knew for certain. This wasn't over. Someone wanted me to know that. I looked around the empty lot one last time. Nobody. No answers. Only questions. And one terrifying realization. The note wasn't the biggest problem. The biggest problem was this. Nathan Cross hadn't sent it. I knew that somehow. Deep down. Which meant someone else was watching. Someone I hadn't even noticed yet. I pressed block caller before I could stop myself. 3 seconds later my phone rang again. Different number. Same silence. I stared at the screen. Whoever was doing this wanted me to know something. The call wasn't the message. The fact that it kept happening was. I let the phone ring until it stopped. Then I dropped it onto the kitchen table and looked around my apartment. Sophia was coloring on the floor. Cartoons played softly in the background. The smell of macaroni filled the room. Everything looked normal. That's what scared me. Because normal life wasn't supposed to come with anonymous phone calls and warning notes. Mom? I looked down. Sophia held up a drawing. It showed our apartment. Me. Her. And a giant dog we definitely didn't own. Do you like it? I smiled. Since when do we have a horse? It's a dog. That's not helping your case. She giggled. For a few seconds the knot in my chest loosened. Then my phone vibrated again. Unknown number. I turned the screen face down. Not tonight. Whoever it was could wait. The next morning things got worse. Not dramatically. Quietly. Which somehow felt more dangerous. The restaurant opened at 11. At 11:15 2 city inspectors walked through the front door. Everyone noticed. Nobody said anything. They checked licenses, storage rooms, food temperatures, paperwork, everything. Rick followed them around like a nervous tour guide. By noon the kitchen staff looked ready to panic. By 1 o'clock another inspector arrived. This one wasn't from the city. I knew because his badge was different. Rick's face turned pale. That wasn't normal. At all. I carried drinks to a table near the office and overheard part of a conversation. Never had this many inspections. Random review. This isn't random. Silence. Then footsteps. I quickly moved away before I got caught listening. But the words stayed with me. This isn't random. The problem was. I agreed. The lunch rush ended. The inspectors finally left. Nobody celebrated. Because nobody felt relieved. The atmosphere had changed. Like everyone was waiting for the next thing to happen. And unfortunately, the next thing happened fast. I walked into the break room and found 2 servers talking. They stopped immediately when they saw me. A bad sign. What? Neither answered. Seriously? What? One of them looked uncomfortable. The other looked guilty. Finally, somebody spoke. People are talking. I folded my arms. About? Pause. You. Of course. I laughed once. A dry sound. That's always a great start. The first server looked away. They think you upset someone important. I upset a customer. Apparently not just a customer. There was again. That sentence. Not just a customer. Like Nathan Cross wasn't a person anymore. Like he was weather. A storm. A force of nature. Something people survived instead of confronted. The thought annoyed me more than it should have. I grabbed my coffee. People need hobbies. Neither laughed. That evening Rick called me into his office. The second I walked inside I knew something had changed. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I hated that. What's wrong? Rick rubbed his forehead. Nothing. That's a lie. Emma? What happened? Silence. Then another sigh. I was starting to hate those sighs. Finally he slid a paper across the desk. My schedule. I looked down. Then looked again. Half my shifts were gone. I blinked. What is this? Temporary adjustment. No. Rick closed his eyes. Emma? No. My voice came out sharper than intended. I need those hours. I know. Then why am I losing them? He didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. The room went very still. You think this is my fault? That's not what I said. You didn't have to. Rick stood, then sat back down, then stood again. He looked exhausted. Look, I'm trying to protect the restaurant. The words landed badly. So that's it. That's not. You followed the same rules I did. I know. Then why am I paying for it? His silence filled the room. I stopped talking. That said everything. The drive home felt longer than usual. Streetlights blurred through the windshield. My gas tank was almost empty. My bank account wasn't much better. For the first time, real anger started pushing through the fear. Not at Nathan. Not yet. At the situation. At the unfairness. At being treated like I had done something wrong. I followed instructions. That's all. Nothing more. Nothing less. So why did it feel like my life was slowly being squeezed from every direction? 3 days passed. Then 4. Then 6. Nathan never appeared. That should have made things easier. Instead, it made everything stranger. Because his absence was everywhere. The calls continued. Inspectors returned. A supplier suddenly delayed deliveries. Rick became more tense each day. And somehow, even without showing up, Nathan's name kept appearing. Like a shadow. Like a rumor. Like somebody standing just outside the frame. Watching. Waiting. Friday night arrived. Another busy shift. Another exhausting crowd. I finished closing duties around midnight. The restaurant parking lot was mostly empty. Only a few cars remained. Cold wind swept across the pavement. I adjusted my jacket and started walking toward my car. Then I saw it. An envelope. White. Plain. Resting beneath my windshield wiper. My footsteps slowed. Every instinct told me to leave it alone. I ignored that instinct. Again. The envelope had no stamp. No address. No name. Nothing. Just white paper. Waiting. I looked around. Nobody. The parking lot sat silent beneath the streetlights. My fingers felt stiff as I opened it. Inside was a single folded sheet. 1 sentence. 5 words. I read them twice. Then a third time. My stomach dropped. The message said, "You embarrassed the wrong man." The wind seemed louder suddenly. The empty parking lot felt larger. Colder. I read the sentence again. Not because I didn't understand it. Because I did. Too well. Someone wanted me scared. The question was who? Nathan? Someone working for him? Someone pretending to work for him? I didn't know. And that uncertainty was becoming its own kind of nightmare. I shoved the paper back into the envelope and climbed into my car. My hands shook slightly when I started the engine. Not from panic. From frustration. Because I still had no answers. Only warnings. Only pressure. Only shadows. Then my phone buzzed. A text message. Unknown number. 3 words. That's all. My pulse immediately sped up. I opened it. The message read, "It's not him." I froze. Another message arrived. Immediately. "You're looking at the wrong person." The screen glowed in the darkness. I stared at the words. Then at the empty parking lot. Then back at the phone. For the first time since all this started, I wasn't afraid of Nathan Cross. I was afraid of whoever had just warned me about him. I smiled when he walked through the door. That scared me more than panic ever could. Because 2 days earlier I would have hidden in the kitchen. Now I wanted answers. The restaurant was unusually quiet for a Thursday. Soft music played through the speakers. Half the tables were empty. Rain tapped gently against the windows. For once, nobody was rushing. Nobody was complaining. Nobody was demanding extra sauce. Then the front doors opened. And everything stopped. Not completely. Just enough. Conversations lowered. Forks paused. Heads turned. Nathan Cross had returned. A dark coat covered his suit. Rain glistened on his shoulders. He looked exactly the same. And completely different. The first time I saw him he looked angry. The second time he looked dangerous. Tonight, he looked tired. The realization caught me off guard. Not physically tired. Something deeper. Like somebody who hadn't slept well in weeks. The feeling disappeared quickly. His expression settled into its usual control. But I had seen it. For 1 second. And now I couldn't unsee it. Rick appeared beside me almost instantly. Oh no. I didn't take my eyes off Nathan. Helpful observation. Maybe he just wants dinner. Neither of us believed that. Nathan scanned the room. His gaze landed on me immediately. Not the hostess. Not Rick. Me. Like he had expected me to be exactly where I was. My stomach tightened. Not with fear. With anticipation. That somehow felt worse. Nathan walked toward us. Each step seemed measured. Intentional. The room watched. I hated that. Nothing good ever happened when people started watching. Mr. Cross, Rick said quickly. Nathan barely acknowledged him. I'd like to speak with Emma. Rick immediately looked at me. Then back at Nathan. Then back at me. The traitor. Of course. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because my manager had just volunteered me for execution. Nathan waited. I set down the menu I was holding. Fine. Rick disappeared so fast he nearly broke a speed record. Coward. Nathan noticed. The corner of his mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile. Not quite anything. Do I get a trial first? I asked. One eyebrow lifted. A trial? Before I'm blamed for another city inspection. To my surprise, Nathan looked genuinely confused. Only for a second. Then it vanished. Interesting. Very interesting. What inspections? I stared. You don't know? No. The answer came too quickly to be fake. That bothered me. Because now I didn't know what to believe. Nathan glanced around the restaurant. Walk with me. That's not suspicious. His expression remained unchanged. I'm not kidnapping you. Good to know. For the first time I saw a flicker of amusement. Small. Gone almost instantly. But there. We moved toward a quieter section near the back. Away from customers. Away from Rick pretending not to watch. Nathan sat at an empty table. I remained standing. He noticed. You can sit. I can also stand. Pause. Then a nod. Fair enough. Silence followed. Not awkward. Not comfortable. Just silence. Nathan studied me carefully. Like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Eventually he spoke. Why? I folded my arms. Why what? Why did you refuse me? There it was. The real reason he came. Not revenge. Not inspections. Not lawyers. The question. I laughed softly. You're still thinking about that? You didn't answer. Neither did you, I thought. But I kept that to myself. For now. I looked toward the rain-covered window. Then back at him. Because I needed my job. Nathan said nothing. So I continued. The table wasn't mine. Still silence. The reservation wasn't mine. Nothing. I follow rules because I can't afford not to. His gaze never left mine. For some reason that made honesty easier. My daughter depends on me. The words landed differently. I saw it happen. Something shifted in his eyes. Not sympathy. Recognition. Like he understood that sentence more than expected. Interesting. Again. I wasn't trying to embarrass you. His jaw tightened slightly. There are easier ways to spend a birthday. For a moment I thought he might laugh. Instead he looked away. Toward the rain. Toward nowhere. And suddenly, he seemed far away. You think it was about the table? I frowned. What does that mean? Nathan remained quiet. A beat passed. Then another. Finally he spoke. It was supposed to be dinner with my father. I blinked. That wasn't the answer I expected. At all. My father canceled. His voice stayed calm. Too calm. I drove around for 2 hours before ending up here. The restaurant suddenly felt very quiet. Nathan looked down briefly. At his watch. At the table. At something invisible. I'm not usually denied much. That's honest. Unfortunately. A faint smile appeared. Then disappeared. And for the first time, he didn't feel like a billionaire. He felt like somebody disappointed. Somebody human. The realization annoyed me. I preferred being angry. Anger was simpler. Nathan leaned back slightly. I wanted one thing to go right that night. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Rain continued tapping against the windows. The restaurant faded into background noise. Then I remembered the envelope. The phone calls. The warning. My expression hardened. Did you send them? Nathan frowned. Send what? The messages. Confusion appeared again. Real confusion. I was becoming better at recognizing it. The calls? Nothing. The envelope? Still nothing. The note on my car. His face darkened. Not with guilt. With irritation. The difference mattered. What note? I watched carefully. Every movement. Every reaction. Nothing felt rehearsed. Nothing felt prepared. Nathan looked genuinely lost. And suddenly the text message from chapter 3 echoed inside my head. You're looking at the wrong person. A chill moved down my arms. Because if Nathan wasn't responsible, then who was? Nathan noticed my expression change. What happened? I hesitated. Then stopped. Trust wasn't free. Not anymore. It's nothing. It doesn't look like nothing. That's because you're observant. His gaze narrowed slightly. So are you. The words lingered. Neither of us moved. Then Nathan reached into his coat pocket. Immediately my muscles tightened. He noticed. Again. That almost smile returned. You really think I'm dangerous? I think rich people have hobbies. Irritating answer. Accurate answer. Instead of arguing, he pulled out a business card. Black. Simple. Expensive looking. He slid it across the table. I didn't touch it. Nathan waited. Take it? No. Pause. Then another. Why? I crossed my arms. Because every time you show up, my life gets worse. That landed. Art. For the first time, he looked genuinely affected. Not angry. Not defensive. Affected. Like the truth had found its target. The silence stretched. Eventually Nathan stood. I didn't send the notes. I didn't answer. I didn't make the calls. Still nothing. His gaze met mine. And if someone is bothering you? He stopped. Something unsaid lingered there. Something unfinished. Then he shook his head. Almost frustrated with himself. I'll look into it. I stared. Why? A strange expression crossed his face. One I couldn't identify. Not completely. Because now I want answers too. Before I could respond, Nathan turned and walked toward the exit. Just like the first night. Only this time felt different. No anger. No threats. No demands. Just questions. The restaurant doors opened. Rain rushed inside. Nathan stepped into the night. Then stopped. He turned back. Just once. And said something that froze me in place. Emma. I hated how my name sounded coming from him. What? His eyes locked onto mine. Come. Serious. Certain. The person sending those messages. Pause. A hesitation. The first real hesitation I'd ever seen from him. Then. They sent one to me too. The doors closed. And he was gone. Leaving me standing there. Holding my breath. Because suddenly this wasn't about a denied table anymore. Someone wasn't trying to scare me. Someone was trying to pull both of us into the same game. I thought he came back to explain everything. I was wrong. His return only created more questions. For 3 days after Nathan's visit, I heard nothing from him. No calls. No messages. No mysterious notes. Nothing. That should have been comforting. Instead, the silence felt unnatural. Like standing in the middle of a storm and realizing the wind had suddenly stopped. You don't relax. You wait. And somehow waiting is worse. Monday morning started with a notification from my banking app. I opened it while drinking coffee. Then nearly dropped the mug. Balance. $413.27. I stared at the screen. Then checked it again. Same number. My reduced shifts had finally caught up with me. Rent was due in 11 days. Groceries were already stretching thin. Sophia needed new school shoes. And my savings? Well, calling it savings felt generous. The apartment felt smaller suddenly. The walls seemed closer. The air heavier. Mom? I looked up. Sophia sat at the kitchen table eating cereal. Are we poor? The spoon froze halfway to my mouth. Children. They always find the question adults are trying hardest to avoid. What? She shrugged. You make that face when money happens. I laughed. A real laugh. Short. Surprised. What does that even mean? The forehead wrinkle. She pointed. I immediately lowered my eyebrows. Too late. She noticed. Always. I walked over and kissed the top of her head. We're okay. It wasn't completely true. But it wasn't completely false either. And right now that was the best answer I had. The restaurant wasn't much better. Nobody treated me badly. That would have been easier. Instead, people acted like I wasn't there. Conversation stopped when I approached. Invitations disappeared. Break room chatter faded. Nobody said anything directly. The distance said enough. I carried a tray through the dining room and overheard 2 servers talking. Not worth getting involved. I know. What if it affects us too? I kept walking. Neither realized I had heard them. Or maybe they did. Maybe they just didn't care. That possibility hurt more. Around 4 in the afternoon, Rick called me into his office again. At this point, I was considering installing a permanent chair. He looked uncomfortable immediately. Never a good sign. What now? Rick handed me a paper. I glanced down, then froze. My schedule. Again. Fewer hours. Even fewer than before. I stared at it, then at him, then back at the paper. You're serious? Emma? No. My voice stayed calm. Almost too calm. I need an explanation. Rick rubbed his neck. I have to think about the business. Interesting. Don't what? Make this harder. I laughed. But it didn't sound like me. You think I'm the one making this harder? The office became very quiet. Rick looked exhausted. Maybe he even felt guilty. The problem was, guilt didn't pay rent. That night, I arrived home to find an envelope taped to my apartment door. My stomach tightened immediately. Not again. Please, not again. I looked around the hallway. Empty. Nobody. Just yellow light and old carpeting. I pulled the envelope free. This one had my name on it. Official letterhead. Not anonymous. Not threatening. Almost. I opened it. Read the first paragraph. Then the second. Then the third. My pulse slowed. Not because I felt better. Because I was too stunned to react. Rent increase. Effective next month. 28%. I read the number 3 times. 28. Not 2. Not 5. 28. Enough to make staying impossible. Enough to force a decision. Enough to break someone already struggling. I sat down on the hallway floor, still holding the paper. The building suddenly felt unfamiliar, like it had already stopped being home. That evening, after Sophia fell asleep, I spread documents across the kitchen table. Bills, schedules, bank statements, rent notices, everything. The pile looked ridiculous, a physical representation of stress. My phone sat beside me. Nathan's business card rested underneath it. I had never thrown it away. That annoyed me. I should have. Instead, I kept looking at it. Black card. Silver lettering. Simple. Expensive. Dangerous. I picked it up. Turned it over. Nothing written on the back. I thought about calling. Then immediately hated myself for considering it. What exactly would I say? My life is falling apart. Are you responsible? Ridiculous. I put the card down. Then picked it back up. Then put it down again. Pathetic. A text message interrupted my thoughts. Unknown number. I froze. Then opened it. The message contained only one photo. Nothing else. No words. No explanation. Just a picture. My stomach dropped. It was a photograph of me. Taken earlier that day. Outside the restaurant. Walking to my car. The angle was wrong for security cameras. Someone had taken it intentionally. My hands went cold. Another message arrived immediately. Keep watching Nathan Cross. I stared. A third message followed. He's hiding something. Then nothing. The conversation ended. No explanation. No answers. Just more questions. I hated questions. Questions couldn't be solved. Not immediately. The next day brought another surprise. A customer asked for me specifically. That almost never happened. Rick appeared near my station. Someone wants to see you. Who? No idea. Great. Exactly the answer I wanted. I walked toward the front. Then stopped. Nathan sat alone near the window. Not eating. Not drinking. Waiting. For me. Every instinct told me to turn around. Unfortunately, curiosity won again. It was becoming a bad habit. I approached slowly. Nathan looked up. His expression immediately changed. Subtle. But noticeable. Like relief. The realization caught me off guard. Why are you here? Good afternoon to you too. Why are you here? A brief pause. Then, your landlord. I frowned. What about him? Nathan leaned forward slightly. He works for one of my competitors. The sentence landed hard. What? He doesn't own the building. My brain struggled to keep up. What are you talking about? Nathan looked frustrated. Not at me. At the situation. I've been investigating the messages. I stared. You actually did? Something flashed across his face. Almost offended. I said I would. Fair point. Nathan slid a folder across the table. I didn't touch it immediately. Inside were copies of documents. Property records. Company names. Addresses. Things I didn't understand. But one detail stood out. The company raising my rent wasn't connected to Nathan. At all. My stomach twisted. Because that meant something worse. Much worse. Maybe I had blamed the wrong person. Again. Nathan watched me carefully. Someone wants you to think it's me. I looked up. Neither of us spoke. Because we were both arriving at the same conclusion. Someone was creating a story. One piece at a time. And we were both inside it. That night, after Sophia went to sleep, I bought a notebook. Nothing fancy. Just a black notebook from a grocery store. I opened the first page. Then started writing. The calls. The notes. The messages. The inspections. The rent increase. Everything. Every detail. Every date. Every fear. Every strange coincidence. Page after page. Line after line. Because for the first time I understood something important. Nobody was coming to save me. Not Rick. Not the police. Not Nathan. If I wanted answers, I would have to find them myself. I closed the notebook. Looked at the growing stack of evidence. And made a decision. The next time somebody tried to scare me, I wasn't going to run. I was going to start asking questions. Then my phone buzzed. One new message. Unknown number. 3 words. The words that changed everything. Check your notebook. My blood turned to ice. Slowly. Very slowly. I looked down. The notebook sat exactly where I left it. Closed. Motionless. On my kitchen table. Someone knew I had started writing. And there was only one way that was possible. Someone had been inside my apartment. For the first time, I looked afraid of my own apartment. Not the hallway. Not the neighborhood. The apartment itself. Because someone knew about the notebook. Someone knew where it was. Someone knew when I started writing. And I couldn't explain how. I barely slept that night. Every sound became suspicious. Every creak felt intentional. At 3 in the morning, I checked the front door twice. At 4, I checked the windows. By 5, I gave up pretending I was going to sleep. When sunrise finally arrived, I felt exhausted. But something else had arrived too. A different feeling. Anger. Fear made me look over my shoulder. Anger made me start looking forward. Whoever was doing this wanted me nervous. Good. I was done being nervous. The next afternoon, I brought the notebook to work. Not because it was safe. Because nowhere felt safe anymore. The notebook sat inside my bag beneath extra uniforms. I checked on it 3 times before lunch. Then another time after lunch. Paranoid? Probably. Wrong? I wasn't sure anymore. The restaurant was unusually busy. The noise helped. Normal conversations. Normal customers. Normal problems. I needed normal. Around 2 o'clock, I noticed him again. The man from weeks ago. The quiet customer. The one who always sat alone. The one who watched. Same corner table. Same black coffee. Same calm expression. And once again, his eyes found me. Not constantly. Not obsessively. Just enough. Like he was monitoring something. My stomach tightened. Because now I remembered. He had been there before the first note. Before the inspections. Before everything. I suddenly couldn't remember a single time I'd seen him with anyone else. No friends. No meetings. No laptop. Nothing. Just coffee. Observation. And silence. Table 17 keeps staring at you. I turned. My coworker Maya stood beside me carrying menus. I blinked. You noticed? She laughed. Everyone noticed. Great. That made me feel much better. Do you know him? No. Ex-boyfriend? No. Secret admirer? Definitely no. Maya looked toward his table. Then back at me. Well, it's creepy. She wasn't wrong. The problem was, I couldn't decide if he felt dangerous or protective. And somehow that uncertainty was worse. An hour later he left. No conversation. No interaction. Just a cash payment and a quiet exit. I watched through the window as he disappeared down the street. The strange thing? Relief didn't come. I actually felt more uneasy after he left. As if I had missed something important. The shift dragged. Customers complained. Orders got mixed up. Rick looked one inconvenience away from a breakdown. Normal restaurant chaos. For a few hours, I almost forgot about the observer. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. I opened the message. No text. Just a photo. The image loaded slowly. Then my blood ran cold. It was another picture of me. Taken that morning. Standing outside Sophia's school. I stared. Then zoomed in. Then froze. Because someone else appeared in the background. A man. Watching. The same man from the restaurant. The observer. I looked closer. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking behind me. At someone else. My pulse quickened. A second message arrived. Look closer. I enlarged the image. The quality blurred. Faces distorted. Then I saw it. Another figure. Farther away. Partially hidden by a parked vehicle. Watching me. watching Sophia, watching everything. Suddenly the observer wasn't the most disturbing person in the photo. The unknown figure was. Who sent this? What? And why did it feel like a warning instead of a threat? Closing time finally arrived. The restaurant emptied. Chairs flipped upside down. Lights dimmed. Employees went home. I walked outside gripping my bag tightly. The notebook rested inside. So did the photo. I planned to go straight home. No detours. No mistakes. Then a voice stopped me. Emma? I froze. Slowly turned. The observer stood beside the parking lot. Hands visible. Keeping his distance. Smart move. I wasn't in the mood for surprises. You've been following me. His expression remained calm. I've been watching. That's somehow worse. A brief smile appeared. Gone quickly. Fair. I looked around. The street remained quiet. No one else nearby. What do you want? The man studied me. Not aggressively. Almost thoughtfully. Then he said something unexpected. You're stronger than you think. I laughed. A short, disbelieving laugh. That's your opening line? It wasn't meant as one. Then what was it? A fact. The answer annoyed me immediately. Do you normally approach strangers and talk like fortune cookies? To my surprise, he almost smiled again. Almost. Then his face became serious. You're asking the wrong questions. My patience vanished. No. I'm asking exactly the right questions. I took a step closer. Who are you? Silence. Why are you watching me? Still silence. How do you know my name? The observer looked toward the street. Then back at me. Finally he answered. My name is Daniel. Not enough. Last name? No. I folded my arms. Not helping. I know. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Daniel reached into his coat. Every muscle in my body tightened. He immediately noticed. Relax. I've heard that before. He slowly removed a thin folder. No sudden movements. No games. Just paper. Daniel held it out. I didn't take it. What is it? Proof. The word hung between us. Proof of what? Eventually curiosity won. Again. Apparently I never learned. I accepted the folder. Opened it. And immediately wished I hadn't. Inside were photographs. Documents. Printed emails. Names. Dates. Patterns. Most meant nothing. One didn't. My name. Repeated. Over and over. My breath caught. I flipped through the pages faster. Restaurant schedules. Employment records. Copies of paperwork. Information nobody should have. My chest tightened. Not with fear. With realization. Someone had been collecting information on me. Systematically. For weeks. Maybe longer. I looked up sharply. What is this? Daniel's expression darkened. You're being watched. I already knew that. No. His voice sharpened slightly. You don't. That got my attention. Immediately. Daniel pointed toward the documents. Whoever is behind this didn't start after the birthday incident. I stared. The parking lot suddenly felt colder. What? He nodded toward one page. I looked down. Then froze. Date stamps. Months old. Long before Nathan entered my life. Long before the restaurant. Long before the denied table. My stomach dropped. No. Daniel remained silent. The silence confirmed everything. No. I said it again. Because I didn't know what else to say. The pages trembled slightly in my hands. Not from weakness. From disbelief. This doesn't make sense. I know. Why me? Daniel looked away. That single movement terrified me. Because it meant he knew something. Something he didn't want to say. I saw it immediately. Why me? No answer. Daniel. Still nothing. Why me? Finally he met my eyes. And for the first time, the calm disappeared. Not completely. Just enough. Enough to reveal concern. Enough to reveal hesitation. Enough to make me afraid of the answer. There was a reason you were chosen that night. The words landed hard. My mind raced. What does that mean? Daniel didn't answer immediately. The hesitation felt endless. Then, a car turned the corner. Daniel looked toward it. Everything about him changed instantly. Alert, focused, concerned. Without warning he stepped back. Go home. What? Now. The urgency in his voice hit me immediately. I turned toward the street. A black sedan had stopped across the road. Engine running. Lights off. Watching. My pulse jumped. When I looked back, Daniel was already moving away. Fast. Purposeful. Leaving? Wait. He stopped briefly. Just long enough. Then he said the one thing that changed everything. The man you're afraid of isn't the one who started this. And then he disappeared into the darkness, leaving me alone, holding a folder full of secrets, standing across from a black sedan, and realizing something terrifying. Nathan Cross wasn't the beginning of my story. He had been pulled into it, just like me. Because tucked inside the folder, behind all the documents, was one photograph. Faded, years old. A photograph of me, standing beside a man I had never met. Or at least, a man I didn't remember meeting. And written across the back in black ink were 4 words. Find out who he is. He didn't deny it. That wasn't what broke me. What broke me was realizing nobody else denied it either. Not Rick. Not my coworkers. Not the people who had watched my life slowly unravel. Everyone had already decided who was responsible. And somehow, everyone had decided I deserved it. 3 days after meeting Daniel, Rick called me into his office again. I almost laughed when I saw the message. At this point, the office felt like a courtroom, and I was always the defendant. The moment I walked inside, I knew something was wrong. Rick couldn't look at me. Again. I was starting to hate that look. The guilty one. The cowardly one. The one people wear when they've already made a decision. Just say it. Rick blinked. What? Whatever bad news you're about to give me. His shoulders dropped. That told me everything. Emma? There it was. The Emma. Not the friendly version. The bad news version. I waited. Rick slid a paper across the desk. Suspension notice. My eyes scanned the page once. Then twice. Then a third time. Unpaid suspension. Pending review. No return date. No guarantee. Nothing. The room became strangely quiet. Not because nobody was talking. Because my brain had stopped processing sound. I looked at Rick. Then the paper. Then Rick again. That's it. His expression tightened. For now. I laughed. A small sound. Almost polite. That's funny. Emma? No, seriously. I picked up the paper. This says I can't work. Silence. My rent is already increasing. Silence. My hours were already cut. Silence. And now this. Rick rubbed his forehead. I don't have a choice. That sentence snapped something inside me. Not loudly. Quietly. Like a rope finally giving way. You always have a choice. His eyes closed briefly. That was answer enough. I packed my locker in 6 minutes. 1 photo. 1 water bottle. 1 extra apron. 3 years of work reduced to a plastic bag. Nobody stopped me. Nobody asked questions. Nobody said goodbye. That hurt more than I expected. Not because I wanted sympathy. Because I realized how easy it was to disappear. 1 schedule change. 1 suspension notice. And suddenly people acted like I had never been there. Outside, rain covered the parking lot. Again. It felt like rain followed every bad day. I sat in my car. Engine off. Bag beside me. Suspension notice on the passenger seat. My phone buzzed. Nathan. The name surprised me. I stared at the screen. Didn't answer. It rang again. Still no answer. 3rd time. 4th. Finally a text arrived. Call me. I ignored it. Another message. Please. That one made me pause. Nathan didn't seem like a please kind of person. Yet there it was. 3 words. Simple. Unexpected. I still didn't call. That evening I stopped at the grocery store. The cart stayed mostly empty. Bread. Milk. Pasta. The cheapest versions of everything. I checked prices twice before placing anything inside. At checkout, I calculated the total in my head. Then recalculated. Then checked my bank app. The cashier noticed. Embarrassing. I hated that. Take your time. I nodded. Unable to explain that $20 now felt enormous. Every dollar had become a decision. Food. Gas. Bills. Survival. Nothing extra. Nothing wasted. Nothing comfortable. When I arrived home, Sophia ran toward me immediately. The second she wrapped her arms around my waist, I knew I couldn't fall apart. Not yet. You're early. Yeah. No work. I hesitated. Too long. She noticed. Of course she noticed. Children always do. Oh. Just 1 word. But somehow it carried understanding. Far more than it should have. I crouched beside her. Things are complicated. Sophia studied me carefully. Then she nodded. Like she accepted that answer. For now. After dinner, she fell asleep on the couch. 1 arm hanging off the cushion. Cartoons still playing softly. I picked her up carefully. carried her to bed, tucked the blanket around her shoulders, then stood there longer than necessary, watching, listening, making sure she was okay. Because honestly, she was the only thing keeping me moving. The only reason I kept getting up every morning. The only reason I hadn't completely given up. The tears came later. Not dramatically. Not all at once. I sat alone at the kitchen table. Suspension notice beside me. Bills spread everywhere. The black notebook open. And suddenly, I couldn't pretend anymore. The apartment was silent. The kind of silence that makes every thought louder. I covered my mouth. Not because I was ashamed. Because I didn't want Sophia hearing me. The tears fell anyway. Slowly. Quietly. No audience. No speeches. No dramatic breakdown. Just exhaustion finally winning. I cried for the job. For the rent. For the fear. For the uncertainty. For every day that felt harder than the one before. Most of all, I cried because I didn't know how to fix any of it. And that terrified me. My phone buzzed again. Nathan. Another message. I almost ignored it. Then I opened it. 3 lines. Nothing more. This wasn't me. Pause. I know you won't believe that. Pause. But I need to show you something. I stared at the screen. Then locked it. Then unlocked it again. Annoying. Very annoying. Because part of me believed him. Not completely. Just enough. Enough to create doubt. Enough to create questions. And questions were becoming dangerous. Near midnight I opened the notebook. The black one. The one somebody somehow knew existed. I turned page after page. Notes. Dates. Names. Patterns. Everything I had collected. Everything I had survived. And suddenly something became clear. I wasn't documenting my collapse. I was documenting a campaign. A strategy. A sequence. Somebody had planned this. Step by step. Pressure. Isolation. Fear. Financial damage. Suspension. Each move pushed me closer to breaking. Closer to disappearing. Closer to surrender. My fingers tightened around the pen. And for the first time, I got angry at the right person. Not Nathan. Not Rick. Not myself. The person behind all of it. The one still hidden. The one still watching. The one who expected me to quit. A strange calm settled over me. The tears stopped. The fear didn't disappear. But it moved. Changed shape. Became something else. Determination. I picked up the pen. Opened to a fresh page. And wrote one sentence. I am done running. I stared at the words. Then added another. Find out who benefits. Then another. Find out who started it. Then one final line. The most important one. Fight back. The words looked small on the page. But they changed something. Inside me. A switch. A boundary. A point of no return. Because I finally understood something. Nobody was coming to rescue me. And maybe that was okay. Because maybe I didn't need rescuing anymore. At 12:17 a.m. my phone vibrated. Unknown number. Not Nathan. Not Daniel. Unknown. I opened the message. One photograph appeared. My breath stopped. The image showed the birthday night. The restaurant. The entrance. Nathan standing near the host stand. Me behind the counter. Exactly as I remembered it. Except for one thing. One detail I had never noticed before. A woman standing in the background. Watching both of us. Watching everything. I zoomed in. The image sharpened. And suddenly I recognized her. Not a stranger. Not a customer. Not somebody from Nathan's world. Someone from mine. Someone I trusted. Someone who had been close to me for years. Then a second message arrived. Only 4 words. She started all of it. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I finally had a target. For the first time he looked afraid of losing control. The strange part? He wasn't even in the room. He was staring at me through a photograph. And somehow I could still see it. The image from the anonymous text sat on my kitchen table. The woman in the background. The woman I trusted. The woman who should never have been there. My friend. My coworker. The person who always knew exactly when something happened in my life. I stared at the photo until sunrise. Not because I didn't recognize her. Because I did. And that terrified me. The next morning I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I didn't call anyone. Instead I made coffee. Opened my notebook. And wrote one sentence. Stop reacting. Start preparing. The words felt different. Stronger. Cleaner. For weeks I'd been surviving. Now I wanted answers. Answers required strategy. And strategy required patience. Something I wasn't naturally good at. Daniel called that afternoon. The number was private. Of course it was. You disappeared. I closed the notebook. You sound disappointed. Concerned. That caught me off guard. I wasn't used to concern anymore. Why? A brief pause. Because people who learn half the truth usually make dangerous decisions. Fair point. I looked at the photograph again. Maya. Silence. Then. So you figured it out? The answer sent a chill through me. You knew. I suspected. I leaned back. That's a very annoying habit. Being right. Keeping information from me. For the first time, I heard something close to amusement. A quiet exhale. Almost a laugh. Almost. Meet me. Where? I'll text the address. The call ended. Typical Daniel. Every conversation felt like he was hiding 3 more conversations. The address led to a small public library. Not exactly the location I expected for secret meetings. Daniel sat near the back. Stacks of books surrounded him. The setting looked so normal it felt suspicious. I sat across from him. Neither of us spoke immediately. Then he slid a folder across the table. Apparently everybody in my life communicated through folders now. I opened it. Business reports. Corporate filings. Property records. Names. Numbers. Charts. My head immediately hurt. I don't understand any of this. You will. Not helpful. Daniel pointed toward one section. Start there. I followed his finger. A company name. Then another. Then another. Different businesses. Different industries. Different owners. At least on paper. Then I noticed something. The same address appeared repeatedly. Again. And again. And again. My pulse quickened. These companies are connected. Daniel nodded. Keep going. I flipped another page. Then froze. Nathan's company appeared. Mixed into the web. Connected. But not controlling it. A piece. Not the center. The realization hit hard. For weeks, I had imagined Nathan as the giant shadow behind everything. Now he looked like another player. Maybe a powerful one. But still a player. Not the game itself. Why are you helping me? The question escaped before I could stop it. Daniel looked away. Toward the library window. Toward the rain outside. Toward something else entirely. When he finally answered, his voice sounded different. Less guarded. My sister didn't get a chance to fight back. I stayed silent. He continued. By the time she realized what was happening, it was too late. Something tightened in my chest. Not pity. Understanding. There was history here. Pain. Old pain. The kind people carried quietly. I'm sorry. Daniel nodded once. Then changed the subject immediately. A man uncomfortable with sympathy. Noted. The following weeks changed everything. Not dramatically. Gradually. The strongest transformations usually happen that way. One decision at a time. One habit at a time. One day at a time. I started reading business books. Financial reports. Articles. Anything I could understand. Anything I couldn't understand. Every night after Sophia fell asleep, I studied. The kitchen table became my classroom. The black notebook became my map. Coffee became a food group. At first, it felt impossible. The language seemed foreign. Investments. Partnerships. Corporate structures. Acquisitions. Numbers everywhere. Then slowly, patterns appeared. Connections appeared. Meaning appeared. The confusion began shrinking. And confidence started growing. A little. Then more. Then even more. I changed other things too. Small things. Important things. I stopped apologizing automatically. I stopped lowering my voice. I stopped avoiding eye contact. The differences sounded minor. They weren't. Every change felt like reclaiming something. Something I had surrendered without realizing it. One afternoon, I caught my reflection in a store window. And paused. Not because I looked beautiful. Because I looked different. More focused. More awake. The exhaustion remained. But it wasn't controlling me anymore. I was changing. And for the first time, I liked the direction. Nathan noticed. Of course he did. He called 3 times over 2 weeks. I ignored every call. Not out of anger. Out of strategy. Distance creates information. People reveal more when they don't get immediate access. Apparently billionaires were no exception. Eventually he texted. You vanished. I stared at the screen. Then locked my phone. Hours later, another message arrived. Are you okay? That one lingered longer than it should have. Not because it was romantic. It wasn't. Not because I trusted him. I didn't. But because it sounded genuine. And genuine had become rare. Dangerously rare. A week later, another message appeared. This one different. I found something. No greeting. No explanation. Just that. Curiosity won. Again. I hated that pattern. What? His response came immediately. Like he had been waiting. The woman in the photograph. Every muscle in my body tightened. I stared at the words. Then typed. How do you know about the photograph? Long pause. 1 minute. 2. Then. Because I have the same photograph. I froze. The world seemed to stop for a second. Then restart. Wrong. Faster. More dangerous. I immediately called him. The phone rang once. Twice. Then connected. Neither of us spoke. Finally. What do you mean? Nathan exhaled slowly. The sound carried exhaustion. Weeks of it. I mean, somebody mailed me a copy. The silence stretched. Neither of us liked that answer. Because it meant somebody wanted us looking at the same thing. The same woman. The same moment. The same mystery. Nathan. My voice sounded smaller than intended. Why are they doing this? Pause. Then another. Then. I think they're trying to force us together. The sentence landed heavily. Not because of romance. Because of strategy. Because if he was right, then somebody had been planning this much longer than either of us realized. That night I couldn't sleep. Again. The photograph sat beside my notebook. 2 pieces of a puzzle. Maybe 3. Maybe 50. Who knew anymore? I studied the image carefully. Every face. Every reflection. Every detail. Then I noticed something strange. Something tiny. Something easy to miss. A reflection in the restaurant window. I grabbed a magnifying glass. Looked closer. And my pulse immediately accelerated. There was another person. Barely visible. Standing outside. Watching. Not Maya. Not Nathan. Not me. Someone else. Someone holding a camera. The person who had taken the photo. I zoomed further. The image blurred. Then sharpened slightly. Just enough. Just enough to reveal one shocking detail. The photographer wasn't a stranger. I knew that face. I knew it very well. Because every week for 3 years, I had worked beside him. I stared at the image. Unable to breathe. Unable to look away. Unable to process what I was seeing. Because the person behind the camera was Rick. My manager. The man who kept saying he had no choice. And suddenly, nothing looked accidental anymore. I thought he would strike first. I was wrong. The first crack appeared where nobody expected it. Including him. The headline appeared on my phone at 6:12 a.m. I almost ignored it. Most mornings started with job applications, bills, and coffee that tasted like disappointment. Business news wasn't exactly part of my routine. But one name stopped me. Nathan Carter. My thumb froze. Then I opened the article. A subsidiary company connected to his corporation had suddenly lost a major contract. Investors were asking questions. Analysts were concerned. Nothing catastrophic. Not yet. Still. It was the first negative headline I had seen attached to his name. Ever. I read the article twice. Then a third time. Looking for something. I wasn't sure what. Maybe proof. Maybe answers. Maybe satisfaction. Instead, I felt uneasy. That surprised me. A few months ago, I would have celebrated. The man I believed destroyed my life was finally facing consequences. So why didn't it feel good? My phone buzzed. Daniel. Of course. It felt like he somehow knew whenever something happened. You're reading the article. Not a question. A statement. I walked toward the kitchen window. How do you always know? You'd be disappointed if I told you. Fair. What does it mean? Pause. Then. It means somebody made a mistake. My stomach tightened. Nathan. No. The answer came too quickly. Too confidently. Interesting. Then who? Silence. The kind Daniel used when he knew more than he wanted to share. Later that day, another headline appeared. Then another. Not huge scandals. Not dramatic collapses. Tiny fractures. Questions. Doubts. Concerns. Small enough to ignore individually. Big enough to notice collectively. Like cracks spreading across glass. The structure still stood. But something underneath was weakening. And everybody could see it. That evening, Sophia sat beside me doing homework. Or pretending to. Mostly pretending. She kept watching me. Finally. Why do you keep staring at your phone? I smiled. Why do you keep staring at me? She grinned. Caught. Because you're making your thinking face. My thinking face? The one where your eyebrows do that weird thing. I laughed. Actually laughed. The real kind. Not the forced version. Not the survival version. The sound surprised both of us. For a second, everything felt normal. Then my phone vibrated again. Nathan. I stared at the screen. Sophia noticed immediately. That's him. I looked up. What? The person you've been thinking about? Children should not be this observant. It's unfair. I don't know what you're talking about. Aha. She returned to her homework, completely unconvinced. I waited until she left the room before opening the message. 3 words. Need to talk. Nothing else. No explanation. No pressure. Just that. I locked the screen. Then unlocked it. Then locked it again. Annoying. Very annoying. 2 hours later, another message arrived. Not about business. Boss. About Maya. That changed everything. I called immediately. The phone connected on the first ring. Like he'd been waiting. Talk. No greeting. No politeness. Straight to the point. Nathan sighed. You always sound angry when you answer. I learned from the best. A brief silence followed. Then, fair. That wasn't the response I expected. Not even close. The conversation shifted. Unexpectedly. Like so many things lately. Did you know Maya worked for my company 3 years ago? Every thought in my head stopped. What? Briefly. I sat upright. What do you mean briefly? 6 months. The room suddenly felt smaller. Nobody had mentioned that. Not Maya. Not Daniel. Nobody. Why didn't you tell me before? Another pause. Longer this time. Then. Because I didn't know she knew you. I closed my eyes. Trying to process that. Trying to decide whether I believed it. The frustrating part? I did. At least partially. Nathan sounded tired. Not manipulative. Not rehearsed. Just tired. Like somebody trying to solve the same puzzle. After the call ended, I opened my notebook. New page. New information. New questions. The list was growing faster than answers. Maya. Rick. Nathan. The photograph. The anonymous messages. The companies. The connections. Nothing fit perfectly. Yet. But something was forming. A shape inside the chaos. 3 days later, the situation escalated. Fast. Too fast. A financial blog published leaked internal documents. Social media exploded. Investors reacted. Reporters started asking questions. News vans appeared outside corporate offices. The story spread. Then spread further. And suddenly, everybody was talking about Nathan Carter. I watched one interview online. Nathan stood outside headquarters. Microphones everywhere. Cameras everywhere. Questions flying from every direction. The version of him I remembered would have looked untouchable. Confident. Controlled. Invincible. Instead, I noticed something different. Fatigue. Not weakness. Not panic. Fatigue. The kind people wear when they've been fighting too many battles for too long. A reporter shouted something. Nathan answered calmly. Another question. Another answer. Then someone asked, "Did someone inside your organization betray you?" The reaction lasted less than a second. Most people would miss it. I didn't. His jaw tightened. His eyes shifted. Just briefly. But it happened. The question mattered. A lot. That night Daniel arrived unexpectedly. Not a phone call. Not a text. An actual visit. I opened the door and immediately knew something was wrong. He looked worried. Actually worried. Which felt alarming. Daniel wasn't easily rattled. What happened? Can I come in? That answer was enough. I stepped aside. 20 minutes later, Sophia was asleep. Daniel sat at the kitchen table. The black notebook between us. His eyes fixed on one page. Then another. Then another. Finally. They moved sooner than expected. My pulse accelerated. Who? The people behind this. I folded my arms. Daniel, if you answer one more question with another mystery, I might throw something. To my surprise, he smiled. A tiny one. Gone almost instantly. Then he slid a document toward me. I looked down. Recognition hit immediately. It was a transfer record. A payment. A large one. Very large. My eyes widened. The sender? One of Nathan's companies. The recipient? Rick. The room became silent. Dangerously silent. That doesn't make sense. I know. It makes him look guilty. I know. I looked up. Daniel nodded slowly. Exactly. Too guilty. Too obvious. Like somebody wanted us to find it. Like somebody wanted Rick blamed. A setup. The realization settled heavily between us. For weeks I had been chasing suspects. Identifying enemies. Connecting dots. But what if someone was arranging those dots for me? What if every discovery had been planted, guided, controlled? The thought was terrifying, because it meant we weren't investigating the game. We were inside it. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. Daniel immediately noticed. So did I. The timing felt wrong. I opened the message. One photograph. Nothing else. The image showed Nathan. Late at night. Standing alone in a parking garage. Talking to someone. The picture wasn't clear. But it didn't need to be. Because I recognized the second person instantly. My blood ran cold. It was Maya. Not from years ago. Not from the restaurant. Recent. Very recent. The timestamp was from yesterday. I stared at the image. Then at Daniel. Then back at the screen. A second message arrived. Only 5 words. They're working together. The kitchen suddenly felt airless. Because if the photograph was real, everything changed. And if it was fake, someone wanted me to destroy the only ally I might still have. I smiled when he lied to me. That scared him more than anger ever could. At least that's what I realized later. At the time, all I knew was this. Nathan Carter was standing in front of me. And neither of us trusted the other anymore. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday, which felt unfair. Life-changing moments should happen during storms. Or dramatic nights. Or somewhere cinematic. Not outside a grocery store while I carried discount cereal and laundry detergent. Yet there he was, leaning against a black SUV. Waiting. Not hiding it. Not pretending it was accidental. Waiting. Specifically for me. I stopped walking. He didn't. For several seconds neither of us moved. Traffic passed behind him. People entered stores. Life continued. But the space between us felt strangely isolated. Like the world had stepped back. Nathan pushed away from the vehicle. Slowly. Carefully. Like he wasn't sure whether I'd leave. Honestly? I wasn't sure either. You found me. His jaw tightened. I wasn't hiding. That answer surprised him. I could tell. Because months ago I would have sounded nervous. Now I sounded tired. There was a difference. A very important difference. Nathan looked older. Not physically. Emotionally. Like the last few weeks had cost him something. The expensive suit remained. The polished image remained. But exhaustion had found its way through the cracks. For the first time. He looked human. What do you want? Simple question. Complicated answer. Apparently. Because he took several seconds before responding. Finally. I need to know what you're doing. I laughed. The sound escaped before I could stop it. Nathan frowned. What? I shook my head. That's incredible. Emma? No. I pointed at myself. You think I'm doing this? His expression didn't change. Which was answer enough. The old version of me would have become defensive. The new version didn't. Instead, I folded my arms. And waited. Silence can be useful. People rush to fill it. Nathan proved the point beautifully. I know you're connected somehow. There it was. The accusation. The suspicion. The fear. All wrapped together. Connected to what? You know exactly what. No. I met his eyes. Actually, I don't. That part was true. The problem was I genuinely didn't understand the full picture anymore. Nobody did. Not even Daniel. Not even Nathan. We were all chasing shadows. Nathan took a step closer. Not threatening. Frustrated. Different thing. Every time something happens, your name appears somewhere nearby. I blinked. Then laughed again. This time harder. He looked annoyed. Good. Do you hear yourself? His jaw flexed. I continued. I lost my job. Silence. My apartment almost disappeared. Silence. My savings vanished. Still silence. And somehow I'm the mastermind? Nathan looked away. Just briefly. But he did. That mattered. Because for the first time, he didn't have an answer. A car horn sounded nearby. Neither of us reacted. The conversation had shifted. The accusation wasn't working anymore. Nathan knew it. I knew it. And suddenly he looked less certain. Much less certain. Finally. I never touched your rent. The statement came from nowhere. I stared at him. What? I never raised it. My thoughts stumbled. Then stopped. Because that had been one of the first things. One of the events that convinced me somebody was targeting me. Nathan rubbed his forehead. Like the conversation exhausted him. I checked. My pulse accelerated. What do you mean you checked? Because I started wondering. That answer landed heavily. Wondering. Not knowing. Wondering. A surprisingly vulnerable word. Nathan looked toward the parking lot. then back at me. There are things happening inside my company I didn't authorize. I stayed silent. Not because I believed him. Because I was listening. A different thing. The leaks. Pause. The contracts. Pause. The payments. Another pause. I didn't approve any of them. The certainty in his voice felt genuine. Dangerously genuine. Because if he was telling the truth, then somebody wasn't attacking me. Or him. They were attacking both of us. The realization sat between us. Uncomfortable. Unwelcome. Possible. Why tell me this? Nathan looked genuinely surprised. As opposed to who? Fair question. Not a comforting one. But fair. A text message interrupted us. My phone. Unknown number. Again. Nathan noticed immediately. So did I. Neither of us liked the timing. I opened it. One sentence. Nothing else. Ask him about Charlotte. I froze. Nathan immediately noticed. What happened? I looked up. The message still glowing on my screen. A decision formed instantly. Risky. Necessary. Who's Charlotte? Everything changed. Immediately. Nathan's face lost color. Not all of it. Enough. Enough for me to see. Enough for me to know. The name mattered. A lot. For several seconds he said nothing. The silence stretched. Dangerous. Heavy. Real. Finally. Where did you hear that? Not who. Not what. Where. Interesting. Very interesting. I slipped the phone into my pocket. Nathan looked frustrated. Then angry. Then something else. Fear. Actual fear. The first genuine fear I had ever seen from him. Who is Charlotte? My voice remained calm. His wasn't. Answer my question first. No. The word surprised both of us. Months ago I would have backed down. Not now. Not anymore. Nathan turned away. Ran a hand through his hair. Then laughed once. A humorless sound. I knew this would happen. I frowned. What would? He looked at me. Really looked at me. Like he was making a decision. A difficult one. Then he said the last thing I expected. Charlotte was my fiancée. The world tilted. Slightly. Just enough. I stared at him. Unable to hide my shock. Nobody had mentioned a fiancé. Not Daniel. Not the newspapers. Nobody. Nathan noticed. Of course he did. Exactly. His voice sounded tired. Very tired. Nobody knows. The conversation had completely changed now. No accusations. No power games. No billionaire image. Just two people standing in a parking lot. And one enormous secret. What happened to her? The question emerged quietly. Nathan looked away. Toward nothing. Toward memory. Toward pain. When he finally answered, his voice was barely above a whisper. She died. Every sound around us seemed to disappear. Cars. People. Everything. Gone. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then, before she died, Nathan swallowed. Art. She found evidence. My pulse accelerated. Evidence. Of what? Nathan looked directly at me. For the first time all day. No walls. No masks. No control. Just honesty. Messy honesty. The dangerous kind. Charlotte discovered someone inside my company was building a second network. My stomach tightened. A second network. The phrase sounded familiar. Too familiar. She tried to expose it. Pause. They destroyed her reputation. Pause. Then she died before she could prove anything. I couldn't breathe. Not properly. Because suddenly everything connected. The leaks. The companies. The photographs. The manipulation. The setup. The game. Nathan's next words hit even harder. I think the same people came after you. The parking lot suddenly felt cold. Very cold. Because if he was right, then this was never about a denied table. Never about a birthday. Never about revenge. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Another message. I opened it. One photograph. And my entire body went still. The image showed Charlotte. Alive. Smiling. Standing beside Maya. Taken just 3 weeks before Charlotte died. Below the photograph was a single sentence. Now ask Nathan why he never told anyone they were sisters. I thought he came back to fix everything. I was wrong. What he brought that night was far more dangerous than an apology. It was regret. And somehow that hurt more. The message arrived at 7:14 p.m. Unknown number. Can we talk? Just once. I stared at the screen while stirring pasta for my daughter. The sender didn't need a name. I already knew. My thumb hovered over the block button. Then another message appeared. I won't keep trying if you say no. I hated that those words made me pause. For months, every move connected to him had felt like pressure, control, consequences. Now there was hesitation. I didn't trust it, but I couldn't ignore it either. Mom? I looked down. My daughter sat at the kitchen table coloring a picture. You burned the pasta. I blinked. Smoke curled from the pot. Right. I turned off the stove. She giggled. For a second the tension broke. Then my phone vibrated again. I didn't open the message. Not yet. 2 hours later my daughter was asleep. The apartment was quiet. I sat near the window with a blanket around my shoulders. Rain tapped softly against the glass. The city lights blurred beyond the storm. My phone rested in my lap. Unread. Waiting. Finally I opened it. The coffee shop on River Street. Tomorrow. 6 p.m. If you don't come, I'll understand. That was all. No demands. No threats. Nothing that sounded like the man who had once made me feel trapped inside my own life. Which made me suspicious. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed 3 words. 1 hour only. The reply came instantly. Thank you. Nothing else. The next evening I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose. Old habit. A small defense. Rain clouds still covered the sky. The coffee shop windows glowed with warm light. I almost turned around. Almost. Instead I stepped inside. And froze. He was already there. Alone. No assistance. No security. No expensive suit. Just a dark sweater and tired eyes. For a moment he looked like a stranger. Then he looked up. And recognized me immediately. Something shifted across his face. Relief. Maybe. I hated noticing it. I walked to the table. I only have an hour. He nodded. I know. Silence settled between us. Uncomfortable. Heavy. Real. Finally I sat down. The waiter appeared. I ordered tea. Nothing more. The waiter left. Neither of us spoke. Not immediately. The silence stretched. Then he looked at the cup in front of him. You look different. I almost laughed. That's why you asked me here? No. His fingers tightened around the coffee mug. That's just the first thing I noticed. I looked away. Outside rain slid down the glass. Inside my pulse refused to slow. I spent months trying to understand you. The words caught me off guard. I turned back. What? You. He gave a short, humorless laugh. That night at the restaurant, I thought you embarrassed me. I said nothing. He continued. I was angry. I noticed. A small wince crossed his face. Good. Let him feel uncomfortable. I know. The table fell quiet again. Then he surprised me. I wanted someone to blame. I blinked. That wasn't what I expected. He exhaled slowly. My birthday wasn't actually the problem. For the first time, curiosity pushed past my anger. What was? His jaw tightened. For a second I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he did. My father died 3 days before. I froze. The noise of the coffee shop seemed to disappear. He looked down. Not at me. Not anywhere. Just down. I didn't tell anyone. His voice sounded distant. Not even most of my employees. I didn't know what to say. He continued anyway. I spent years trying to earn his approval. A bitter smile appeared. I never got it. I watched him carefully. Every word felt difficult. Forced out. Like broken glass. When I walked into that restaurant, I wasn't looking for a table. His eyes finally met mine. I was looking for something to go right. The honesty hit harder than anger ever could. Because it felt real. And real things were harder to fight. I folded my arms. That doesn't justify what happened. No. The answer came immediately. No, it doesn't. I expected an argument. A defense. An excuse. Instead, I got agreement. And somehow that left me with nowhere to swing my anger. You made my life miserable. I know. My shifts disappeared. I know. My rent suddenly increased. His expression darkened. I didn't order that. I narrowed my eyes. Really? Really? For the first time, frustration flashed across his face. Not everything was me. I studied him, trying to find the lie. Maybe there was one. Maybe there wasn't. I wasn't sure anymore. And that uncertainty annoyed me. Because certainty was easier. Villains were easier. People were complicated. He reached into his jacket. I stiffened. Then he placed a thin folder on the table. No dramatic movement. No tricks. Just a folder. What is that? Proof. I didn't touch it. Of what? Things I should have stopped. My stomach tightened. Slowly I opened it. documents, emails, internal reports, names, dates, conversations. My eyes widened. Some people inside his company had targeted me without his direct orders. Others had exaggerated his anger to gain favor. A few had used his name to settle their own scores. I flipped through page after page, speechless. What is this? The truth. I looked up. Why give me this? His answer came quietly. Because you deserved it months ago. Neither of us spoke for a while. The rain outside grew heavier. I stared at the papers, then at him, then back again. The version of him I had carried in my head suddenly felt incomplete. Not innocent, not good, but incomplete. And I didn't know what to do with that. Finally, I closed the folder. You still chose revenge. His eyes lowered. Yes. The honesty struck again. No excuses. No attempt to rewrite history. Just truth. Ugly truth. I wanted you to suffer. The words landed heavily between us. I appreciated that he said them. I hated that he said them. Both feelings existed at once. I know. I thought it would make me feel better. His laugh sounded empty. It didn't. For the first time since meeting him, I saw exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion. Something deeper. The kind that settles into a person after realizing they became someone they never wanted to be. He rubbed his forehead. I kept expecting you to break. I stared. What? I thought eventually you'd quit. His voice dropped. Or leave. I didn't answer. Instead you kept standing up. Another pause. You kept fighting. I swallowed. My chest felt strange. Tight. Uncomfortable. Not because I forgave him. I didn't. Because I finally understood something. He wasn't looking at me like an enemy anymore. He was looking at me like someone who had exposed a flaw he couldn't ignore. Why are you really here? The question escaped before I could stop it. He looked surprised. Then thoughtful. Then honest. I don't know. That answer should have frustrated me. Instead it felt genuine. I think. He stopped. Started again. I think I needed you to know I was wrong. The words hung there. Simple. Unpolished. Real. No grand speech. No dramatic declaration. Just 4 words. I was wrong. And somehow that carried more weight than any perfect apology. I looked at the clock. My hour was almost over. I stood. He didn't stop me. Didn't reach for my arm. Didn't make promises. I appreciated that. As I picked up my coat, he spoke again. You're not the same person I met that night. I looked at him. No. My voice stayed steady. I'm not. Something painful moved through his expression. Not anger. Not pride. Loss. As if he finally understood exactly how much damage had been done. And exactly how impossible it was to undo. I turned toward the door. Then paused. Just once. You don't get credit for regretting it. His face tightened. I know. And regret doesn't erase consequences. I know. I nodded. Then I left. The rain had stopped. Cold air filled my lungs. I walked toward my car. One step. Then another. My phone vibrated. A new message. From the silent observer. Only one sentence. You finally saw the truth. I frowned. Then a second message arrived. And everything inside me went still. Now you're ready to learn why you were chosen that night in the first place. I stared at the screen. Because for the first time, I realized the restaurant had never been an accident. For the first time he looked afraid of losing me. Not angry. Not frustrated. Afraid. And somehow that was the easiest moment of all. I didn't answer the observer's message. Not immediately. I sat alone in my apartment after putting my daughter to bed, staring at the glowing screen. Now you're ready to learn why you were chosen that night in the first place. The words refused to leave my mind. For months, I had believed everything started with a denied table. A birthday. A mistake. Bad timing. Now I wasn't sure anymore. The uncertainty followed me into sleep. And it was waiting when I woke up. The next morning my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Hello. It's time. The observer. No greeting. No explanation. Just those 2 words. I walked to the window. What do you mean? You wanted answers. His voice stayed calm. Meet me at noon. Why now? Pause. Then. Because he's finally ready to tell the truth. The line went dead. At 11:58 I stood outside a quiet building downtown. Glass walls. Steel doors. The kind of place I never would have entered a year ago. The observer waited near the entrance. Dark coat. Same unreadable expression. I stopped in front of him. You've been speaking in riddles for months. I know. You could have explained everything. No. The answer came quickly. I frowned. What does that mean? He looked at me carefully. Because you wouldn't have believed me. That irritated me. But part of me knew he was right. A year ago, I barely believed in myself. Why would I have believed any of this? We entered the building. An elevator carried us to the top floor. The ride felt longer than it actually was. My stomach tightened with every passing floor. Finally, the doors opened. A conference room stood at the end of the hallway. The observer stopped walking. Go inside. What about you? I'm not part of this conversation. Before I could ask another question, he turned away and left. Just like that. I opened the door and found him waiting. Alone. Again. No assistants. No lawyers. No audience. Just him. Sunlight poured through the massive windows behind him. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he stood. You came. I almost laughed. You sound surprised. I am. Honest. Again. That was becoming a problem. I remained near the door. What truth am I supposed to hear? Something flickered across his face. Regret. Maybe embarrassment. Maybe both. He motioned toward a chair. I stayed standing. His shoulders dropped slightly. Fair enough. He deserved that. Finally he spoke. The restaurant wasn't random. The room suddenly felt smaller. My pulse quickened. I said nothing. You were chosen before I arrived. Every muscle in my body tightened. What? His gaze lowered briefly, then returned to mine. My company was evaluating businesses we planned to acquire. Confusion spread through me. What does that have to do with me? Everything. He walked toward the window. Slowly. Carefully. Like every word required effort. The restaurant owner was under investigation. I blinked. What? He'd been stealing employee wages for years. The information hit hard. Images flashed through my mind. Late paychecks. Missing overtime. Excuses. Promises. Suddenly, everything looked different. He was what? We had evidence. I stared at him, trying to process it. The restaurant owner. The person who constantly blamed employees. The person who cut shifts. The person who acted like everyone's struggles were their fault. All along. I still don't understand. His jaw tightened. I asked for anonymous employee evaluations. My stomach dropped. No. No way. You mean? You. The word landed heavily. You were one of the names that kept appearing. I couldn't speak. You followed rules. He continued quietly. You protected customers. You helped coworkers. You never lied on reports. My throat felt dry. I didn't know any of that. I know. Silence. Then. The night I came in was supposed to be an observation. I froze. An observation. Not revenge. Not arrogance. Not entitlement. An observation. Then everything changed. You denied me. A faint smile appeared. Not amused. Just reflective. And for the first time all week, someone treated me exactly like everyone else. I stared. What? You didn't care who I was. His voice lowered. You followed policy. The irony hit me like a wave. The very thing that made him notice me had also triggered everything that followed. I sat down slowly, suddenly needing the chair. The room felt unsteady. Then why punish me? The question came out sharper than I intended. His expression darkened. Because there was no good answer. I was angry. There it was. The ugly truth again. My father had just died. His hands clenched. I wasn't thinking clearly. I looked away. Part of me understood. Another part refused to excuse it. Both feelings existed together. Messy. Uncomfortable. Human. I spent months blaming you. He laughed once. A short sound. No. He shook his head. That's not true. I looked back. What? His eyes met mine. I spent months blaming myself. The honesty caught me off guard. Again. I just used you as a distraction. Neither of us spoke after that. Because there wasn't much to say. The damage already existed. No explanation could erase it. Minutes passed. Quiet. Heavy. Then he reached into his pocket. I immediately tensed. He noticed. A flash of pain crossed his face. Then he placed something on the table. A photograph. One. I picked it up. A little girl stood beside her mother. Smiling. Happy. What is this? My favorite picture. I frowned. Why show me? His voice softened. Because she raised me alone. The room went still. I looked at him, then at the photo, then back again. I didn't know. Nobody does. His eyes remained on the picture. My mother worked 3 jobs. The next words came quietly. When I saw you with your daughter. He stopped. Couldn't finish. For the first time, I saw him lose control of a sentence. The silence said the rest. He saw something familiar. Something he wasn't ready to face. Something that reminded him of what he'd lost. And instead of dealing with that pain, he turned it outward. Toward me. The realization settled between us. Neither of us needed to say it. We both understood. Finally I stood. The conversation was over. Maybe not because every question had been answered, but because the important ones had. He stood too. Neither of us moved closer. The distance remained, and maybe it always would. You rebuilt your life. His voice sounded rough. I adjusted my coat. Yes. I didn't think you could. I smiled slightly. That's because you never really knew me. The words landed. I saw it happen. He nodded once, accepting it. Outside the building, sunlight filled the city. Bright, clean. No. My daughter waited near the fountain with a family friend. The moment she saw me, she ran forward. Mom? I caught her easily. Her laughter filled the air. Simple, pure, real. The most important thing in my world. Always. I looked back once. Only once. Through the glass entrance. He stood inside. Watching. Not trying to stop me. Not calling my name. Not chasing me. Just watching. And finally understanding. I wasn't the woman from the restaurant anymore. That version of me was gone. The frightened version. The exhausted version. The version that believed survival was enough. Gone. My daughter slipped her hand into mine. Can we go home? I smiled. Yeah. We started walking. One step. Then another. The city stretched ahead. Wide open. For the first time in a very long time, the future felt like something I could choose. Not something that happened to me. Something I owned. Something I earned. And as I walked away, I realized my final choice had never really been about him. It had always been about me. I chose my peace. I chose my future. I chose myself. And I never looked back.